right? And how we place the music is interesting too. It really depends on the application. So, a lot of times we'll just have some straight ahead point A to point B linear music, right, in a game. It can be interactive, it can be adaptive, looped, or even blended together in certain ways. And of course, not being linear, we're adjusting the music on the fly, whether it's just a bunch of loops or changing between different modes, like from the setup screen to the gameplay mode, right? Or adapting or interacting with specific events. But the whole deal here is we don't want to break the fourth wall, right? We don't want to draw attention away from the game to ourselves as the composer, unless you intend to do that with something over the top or that's going to kind of be a jarring effect. You really want to be transparent. I often say, you've probably heard me say this before, maybe in another lecture, but the best compliment we can get as audio designers, in this case composers, is silence. It's when things are wrong that people tend to speak up and say, "Oh, that music sounds terrible. Did you hear the music now? I can't believe who composed this thing anyway." But if the music's great, people just tend to accept it as part of the game, and everything's fine. But anyway, try not to bring attention to yourself unless that is the intent. And where do we place music? Well, all over the place, right? Cinematics and cutscenes, menu screens, anything that's going to be in the background as we play in a particular level or mission objective. We want to use it to tie together different levels or missions. Again, any sort of victory or defeat, win or lose cues are nice too. Okay, so with cinematics here, not cutscenes per se, but the actual cinematic, like the mighty big budget introduction, right? It's going to be probably using music as a film score. I'm talking about for some AAA blockbuster game here. So some pulse-pounding excitement or anticipation, any emotions that we need to conjure up. Of course, it could be comedic too and still be over the top. But we want to tailor the scenes, the music to the different scenes in the cinematic. And this is something that I can tell you as a composer is very challenging because it changes a lot. Like in film, oftentimes you'll get an assignment, say, and you have to compose for a bunch of different scenes, and the scenes tend to stay, once they're fixed, that's kind of it. And there's some variation, but it's not too bad. In video games, there's so much iteration and it's happening so quickly that if you compose something that's 20 seconds long and then you go to the next scene, that's going to be 5 seconds long. In the next day, it could change 3 or 4 times, and so you have to kind of be flexible in terms of how much material you compose for each scene and find ways to map the speed, what we call the tempo mapping of each scene. It can get quite complex, but you get used to it after a while. One of the things that I do, instead of just scoring to the finished movie, which almost never happens, you start out early and you do what's called a spotting session first. So I'll actually sit down and talk to the audio director. Sometimes I'll be talking to myself because I'll be the audio director, but we'll also have an art director. There's a designer, creative director, producer, anybody who's going to be involved in this cinematic or cutscene. Okay. And I would like to do a spotting session. So I'll think about each scene, talk it over. Maybe there's some storyboards or some concept art available, and I can think about what types of instrumentation I might have for a certain scene and how much I will need and how long it might take. Just start planning early as you can for these types of cinematics. Okay, and as I said, the timings of each scene can change anytime over the course of development, and often it's every day, rapid fire. So you really need to get a head start on getting these segments nailed down. Case in point, one of my favorite series, Ratchet & Clank, Insomniac Games, right? Here is a really silly opening cinematic that has a lot of music changes. I want you to listen to all the changes that the composer had to put together for this. Let's take a listen.
Open up on 7. Move it out, Shiv.
Oh, yeah. Hero, huh?
Identifying prisoner 117, Shiv, Helix.
You think you can break me, Copper? Yeah, I've been in the darkest pits of the universe. Places that would make your bolts rattle. The eternity pits of Zord Doom. The iron holding no balance. Nah.
Greetings, new fish. I'm...
Captain Quark. I don't believe it. You're here. I used to dream of being arrested by you.
Now get out of here. I was talking to you, Zed.
Yes, Captain.
So, new fish, I take it you followed my many, many adventures?
Of course I have. You're the most famous superhero in the galaxy.
He ain't famous anymore.
Words hurt, Solitary Bill.
I'm a huge fan. I even pre-ordered the new Ratchet & Clank Holo game.
The what?
You know, the game based on that incident with you and that Lombax.
Oh, you must mean the holo film. Yeah, it's pretty good, if you like all CG.
No, I mean the game. It's based on the Holo film. Look, here's my confirmation email. I'm having it mag shipped to prison.
They're making a game based on a holo film based on my life? But they haven't even consulted me. Oh, this is my fault. I've been away from my adoring public in this forsaken place too long. And now, no one will ever hear my side.
I'd like to hear your side, Captain.
You would? Well, then sit down, wary criminal, and I'll tell you a story. It all started with a hapless Lombax named Ratchet.
Okay, so that was a bit long, but I'm going to guess the music changed about 10 times in terms of the different motifs, style. And so that was a lot of changes there. And that's a lot to work with for storyboarding and all that. But, you know, again, kudos to the composer for that incredible score for the cinematic there, Ratchet and Clank. And I have one for the Elder Scrolls you can listen to later, which is also very good. Another one for Borderlands, the original Borderlands, Ain't No Rest for the Wicked from Cage the Elephant. And here, just talking about how an existing song is simply used as the soundtrack, and you're just creating a cinematic around it, like a music video. All right, so I'll let you watch that a little bit later. For menu screens, you really want to have, I've found, at least in my experience, you want to have consistent dynamics as you play it out. So if you have a 30-second or a 1-minute menu screen or setup screen tune, you usually don't want to have wild dynamics where you have these roller coaster rides of loud and soft passages and all. I tend to want to keep them even. I think the person trying to set up the game with all the sliders and dials and preferences wants it kind of in the background as well. Exciting, but kind of still in the background. So you want to have consistent dynamics. So for like Deadliest Catch, main menu, for example. So it's kind of, epic orchestral. And then for SimCity Societies, you may have something contemporary and funky and kind of jazzy all at once. That was the one I wrote that they liked the best in the focus group, so we went with that one. and that was a cool project too, SimCity Societies from EA. Anyway, talking about in-game and background music now. Really, you're spending most of your time playing the game and things are in a general state of normalcy, perhaps, whatever that means for you, whether that means normal being, slashing goblins in a dungeon, or maybe you're just walking in a peaceful forest. Whatever it is, there's some sort of background music that will be consistent and relatively even keel with what's going on in the background. So we want to spend most of our time in this kind of domain. So here's Plants vs. Zombies. This is an example. Okay. The music does change as the dynamics of the game changes, but it never gets too ridiculous, and it has its own kind of domain that it lives in, compositionally and dynamically.
The zombies are coming.
So it's almost like minimalistic until you get towards the midpoint or end of a wave. All right, great music by Laura Shigehara. All right, here, this is a classic that I'm sure everybody knows, which is Undertale. Toby Fox wrote, I believe, 100, maybe even, I don't know, like 101. I think I keep on the fence. I think it was 101 tunes that were written for this amazing game. And he really did an effective job of using music to enhance any sort of moment, whether it's a tranquil moment where you're just kind of, just kind of walking around peacefully, or you're fighting the final boss. And so you have something like here, starting out a new home. This is the pacifist route, right? All right, and then the final battle, Sans boss fight, the genocide route. My favorite track, Megalovania. Yeah, I could have a whole lecture just on Undertale, I think, but I just had to relegate it to 2 tunes in the interest of time. So I'll move on here. Oops, there we go. So music can be more or less intense, not just by increasing the tempo, but we could also remove some of the instruments. We call it instrumentation. And that's just the palette of instruments that we choose in a song, whether you have bass, drums, guitar, keyboards, synthesizer, and we just maybe randomly remove some of those temporarily, or by design we remove some based on the intensity level of the game, which you can check out here in Borderlands 2 later on.